and welcome to our storytelling show. Thanks y'all for coming. I'm Aug. I've got three very funny comedians telling some stories tonight as well, and I'm going to tell the Nick Cave's bar story, which I've been waiting years to tell.
Yes.
Before we get to that, though, Nick Cave's bar was this disastrous misadventure I went on with my best friend 20 years ago. But to give you an idea of our relationship at the time, I'm going to tell you just a short another little story. It was the summer of 2000, and I had just gotten back from a family vacation, and I was at my parents' house on the last day, and it was like noon, and I had taken a bunch of codeine, and I was lying on the floor watching a E! True Hollywood Story on Jennifer Love Hewitt. You remember living it up in your 20s. And from out of nowhere, this idea came to me, and it hit me like a flash of lightning. I thought it was completely genius, and I jumped up, ran to the phone, and called my best friend Andy back in Boston, and I said, wouldn't it be hilarious to watch I Know What You Did Last Summer every day for an entire summer, so that the next year when someone says, hey, what'd you do last summer? You can then say, well, I watched, etc. And Andy said, absolutely not. This is a terrible idea. You've had a ton of terrible ideas in your life, but this is by far the worst. But I believed in it. And it took me a couple hours, and I wore him down. I finally convinced him to join me on this crazy adventure. So the next day, I drove back up to Boston all excited, picked Andy up after work. We went to the video store, rented the video cassette of I Know What You Did Last Summer, went back to my apartment and watched it. And it was tough going. But it wasn't as nearly as tough going as days 2, 3, and 4, when we realized we were now going to have to carve 2 hours out of our night every night to make this happen. And that wasn't nearly as tough going as days 5 and 6, when I had to go back to Connecticut for a family thing, so Andy and I had to copy the video and call each other at night and watch it together over the phone. Now, the plan was flawed from the beginning, because it was like August 15th when I thought of this, and the 16th when we started it. So it wasn't going to be an entire summer. It was going to be 36 days total. And just by virtue of knowing us, friends of ours have seen this 7, 8, 9 times, because if you wanted to hang out with us back then, that's what you had to do. And we would bring it to your house. I mean, we were very, polite about it. But moving day comes around, September 1st, and Andy and I are moving in together with our friend Dave. And it was the hottest day of the year. It was like 100 degrees out. We had to get up at 6 in the morning and go to the other side of Boston to get the truck, and then spent 8 hours just lugging furniture up and down stairs and across town. And when we finally were done moving, all we wanted to do was go to the bar and get drunk. But first, we had to set up our living room and watch I Know What You Did Last Summer. Now, we got really into it, though. We soon had all the dialogue memorized, and we're singing along to all the songs, and we're noticing all these crazy artistic choices on the part of the director, which, let's be honest, weren't really there. And then halfway through day 18, we have a party at our friend Rick's house, and we have a double header with I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. But things started to wane by the last week, and we just, it wasn't this crazy art film that was more poetic than anyone had thought before that we had discovered. And we just had to have it on in the room with us while we were there. We'd be cleaning or reading magazines, anything not to have to look at the screen just one more time. But in the middle of all this, that last week, our friend Megan calls us up, and she's like, guys, I hate to tell you this. And she didn't hate to tell us it. She had pure devilish delight in her voice as she said, you got the date wrong. The first day of autumn is actually September 22nd, not September 21st. You're going to have to watch it a 37th time. So, what could we do? We had come this far in this bizarre rite of passage, or whatever it was, and we rallied, and it was going to be the last time we would presumably ever watch this movie. So for the last day, we went out, we bought cheap champagne, and we got drunk, well, drunker than we normally did while watching it. And at the end, we signed the champagne bottles and put them up on eBay as autographed I Know What You Did Last Summer memorabilia. And much to our shock, people we didn't even know were bidding on them. Now, you'd think we'd remember like every single detail of this movie, that it'd just be burned into our brains. But a couple years after this, I turned on the TV late at night, and it was that scene where Sarah Michelle Gellar's in the back of the cop car, and I couldn't remember a single thing about the movie, not even her name, Helen Shivers, but I had blacked the entire thing out. And then there was that thing like 5 years ago where those two comedians in New Zealand were watching Grown Ups 2 every Monday for a year straight. And they made like a big thing about it. It made the news. They were having a podcast to talk about the severe psychological damage this did to them. Watching it once a week, mind you. It wasn't every day like the real men we were. But all our friends were messaging us, yo, you guys should get in touch with them, go on their podcast, talk about your shared experience. And Andy and I had a little powwow, and very quickly, both came to the conclusion we should never admit to this shame again. Until now, when I needed an opening to my story show. So, there you go. So, are you ready for the show? Woo!